SCP-294 refuses to comply with personnel requests for liquids of any kind ever since the incident, and you seriously do not realize how much we spend per quarter on Folgers alone. It's appalling, and now that I'm running the numbers, I can see it would be cheaper in the long run to replace Folgers' entire payroll roster with D-Class personnel. That's a line from SCP-990J, one of the, count 'em, 10 articles in SCP Cafe Week 20. I'm your host, Blue Soul, SCP Wiki moderator, chat operator, subreddit moderator, author, loving husband, dog petter, cologne aficionado, Tottenham Hotspur supporter, and as of last week, plus 1,000 rating club member. How are you guys doing? We have an incredible amount of stuff to cover. I'm really excited about the show, not just because I'm caffeinated as all hell. No. I have a lot to discuss. First and foremost, I have a series premiere to announce. Making a Monster Season 1, Episode 1 will be going out to Patreon subscribers next Tuesday, May 21st, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, going out the following week on the scp.cafe feed as well as all other channels on the 28th. So Making a Monster, despite the name, it's not strictly about making monsters. It is a deep analysis of the writing process. I'm going through writing a main list entry from concept to execution to post-mortem. Every piece of it is going to get broken down in a 45-minute to 1-hour episode. We are actually going to build a skip, and we're going to post it, and we're going to see what happens. This will be my first main lister in, I want to say, actually almost 7 years. My last main lister was written in 2012. Everything since then has been either J's or Tails. So this will actually only be my second main list entry. So, and that's something to consider, for new writers, people that are, potentially and understandably, maybe overwhelmed or intimidated by some of the more prolific posters on the site. Nobody's expecting you to be like a Roger in his prime or a 9-volt or Beryllium, where they're putting out, 8, 9, 10 skips in a month. Stick around, be a friendly face and somebody that can provide valuable insight, and you will be as welcome as any of those authors. So that's coming up. I'm really excited. I have a little bit of editing work to do on it, but really pleased with how it turned out, and hope you enjoy it. This is the first of the bonus content recorded for Patreon members, of which I have 4 new patrons to thank. So special thank yous to the Jupiter Cannon, JC, Mavor, and Procyon Lotor, my fellow moderator. We came up through the ranks together. He has put in far more effort than I ever intend to, in all honesty. But God, we couldn't do a lot of what we do without him and his drive to get community outreach and licensing to the levels that they really need to be for this not to feel like a real Mickey Mouse operation. Want to take a moment to thank my iTunes listeners tuning in from South Africa for having me top the charts of the literature category, beating out the New York Times, Myths and Legends, the No Sleep podcast. SCP Cafe, for one glorious day this week, was on top of the heap, on top of the world, #1 in the literature charts in South Africa. I think that's pretty goddamn cool. Thank you guys. I really appreciate that. Over on the SCP Cafe store, I've been running a special on O5 keycards. This is a new design. These are down right now from $8.95 all the way to $4.95, and since they are small little badges, even with a badge holder, they fit in a standard envelope, so shipping within the US is normally under $1, and international is usually no more than $2. So if you're interested, they're pretty cool. There's images up on store.scp.cafe. You can take a look, and I am giving away 4 of those right now. I had a Reddit thread up a few days ago, and I'm going to draw those winners now with Reddit Raffler, and I'm also going to draw my 2 for my patrons that had an exclusive crack at their own. On the Reddit side, I have ignored a couple of users that didn't quite follow the rules. One didn't follow the rules, and one has already deleted their account. So we are picking 2 winners. Minimum 5 days old now with at least 10 karma. We'll hit the submit button. Oh, I suppose I have to actually pick one that I am choosing. Here we go, the O5 keycard giveaway, and we submit it. We have 2 winners, allegedly, fetching the comments, doing the big choosing the winners, and I have a Dr. Andy Hendrickson and a user 424C414E4B. That looks like a MAC address. I'm not sure what it is. They chose for their favorite SCPs. The former chose 1730, What Happened to Site 13, and the latter chose SCP-507. So congratulations to both of you. I will be messaging you directly, letting you know that you won. On the Patreon side, I have it a little different. I've got a list, and the higher tiers do get a little bit better odds at this. They get into the list multiple times, but everybody that has a shipping address on file does have a crack at it, and I'm going to hit this little randomizer I have built, spam that key a few times, and we're going to pick 2 of them. First one is Dade R. Second one is Procyon Lotor. So congratulations to both of you. I will be in touch with each of you and letting you know that your free stuff is on the way. Last but not least, on the store side, I have 2 new shirt designs. I talked about them last week. They should be up and posted by the time you hear this recording. They are a nice Keter black on white shirt. Was inspired by one of my favorite shirts. I think you will like it. It looks pretty damn sharp. I've also rejiggered the Icon 2. This is my former Icon design. I'm calling it Icon 2 now, to work better with my my design process and provide a better quality shirt. I've also restocked my Midnight Navy. I was down to a single medium and I was out of XL and 2XL. I have plenty of all of those now, so our stockier listeners and supporters, those are back in stock and will be available for purchase by the time you hear this. I have a little bit of wiki news. Last but not least, there's going to be a seminar held by the man himself, Dr. Bright. The topic is going to be writing memorable and interesting characters. Bright is done such an outstanding job of that. I think this is going to be an absolutely fascinating seminar. We are holding it on the IRC network in the workshop channel. If you need any help on getting connected, because you do need to be a registered user on the IRC to join workshop, please figure it out between now and the seminar itself, which will be Sunday the 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. This is going to be fun. I'm going to do I'm going to stick around for this. I want to be around and be part of the conversation. Transcripts will be available. If you can't make it, don't worry. Check on the wiki after it's done. We should have links available for you. If you need help on the chat side of things, you can check the chat guide on scpwiki.net and read it, use the app. I would suggest finding a better chat client than the Mibit app that we embed there, but this should be worth your time. I'm really excited about the concept. With all that said, let's get into it, man. We had an absolutely monster week for skips. There were 26 posted and still surviving at my selection time, 22 of them in scope. I really struggled this week getting this list narrowed down. So I mentioned 10 articles in the beginning here. I have my 5 normal picks. I have 2 long boys. I have 2 small boys. And I have a Patreon selection that I'm going to talk about very briefly. But that brings the total all the way up to 10. So without further ado, let's get going. SCP-4152, Basement Love, Acrylic on Canvas by Devin Martin. We have an image that is blurred unless you hover over it. I generally don't like this particular thing for a couple of reasons. One, unless there's some reason to blur it, there's no reason to do so. The other is that it doesn't work on phones. And mobile viewers are over half of our viewership. If you do this on a phone, you have to tap it. When you tap it, it takes you off the page for the skip itself. But what we have when you do hover over it is it's a painting, and it is a woman in the background and what looks like a child in the foreground. The child is very small compared to the woman, and I don't think it's just foreshortening. I think there is some symbolic meaning behind it. There's a number of chairs in it. It's all very colorful, but not immediately intuitive as to what's going on. Of note, the woman does have a key on a belt loop, through a little string attached to the belt loop. And that's the only image in the work. We have an object class of safe and all of 2 sentences of procedures. The skip is contained in a standard safes class storage locker at Site 28, and testing of the skip is currently suspended. So right off the bat, that lets you know, presumably, that we have done something. We didn't quite anticipate some results of our testing, and so we have suspended them. The skip is described as a canvas painting measuring 120 centimeters by 60 centimeters, believed to have been created by a member of Are We Cool Yet? And the gimmick here is that the skip will affect viewers with no history of childhood trauma as it pertains to parental abuse or neglect. They will develop such memories that take place between the ages of 6 and 18, and the memories that are generated are things that could have plausibly happened in their childhood. And we also find that we cannot remove these memories with amnestics through Class C. That's an unclear sentence. It says testing with amnestics through Class C. You would, potentially get a meaning of that, but you can get through it from either direction. And, perhaps that doesn't really matter because you assume that in universe you would know that means it's from the weakest up to Class C. Doesn't work. So, that's fine. But in any event, amnestics up to Class C are unable to remove these memories, and that indicates, according to the work, that the skip is capable of generating or providing access to long-term memories. So we are sort of postulating that this is actually just having them recall suppressed memories from their own lives. Research to this has been inconclusive, and we have a footnote here about a supplemental experiment log. The next paragraph in this answers the question of, well, what about people that already have confirmed instances of parental abuse? They experience flashbacks, anxiety, general symptoms that you could sort of box into post-traumatic stress disorder, and these individuals are largely uncooperative, and so we're not really sure how they sort of fit together with the primary effect of the skip itself. We go from here to a log, and what we do in this experiment log is we ask individuals to view the skip for 5 minutes and record a memory from their childhood using a mic and tape recorder. There's 2 logs here by 2 different D class that sort of escalate the situation. The first one's not bad. It's, I say not bad. I should be clear. Parental abuse from your parents in this way is not, acceptable at all. But in the relative seriousness and severity of these instances as we progress through the skip, these are relatively not as bad. It begins with simple verbal abuse and gets into destroying of another D class's personal property, their computer, and we go to a research assistant who actually has the first instance of direct violence, and after recalling this memory, requesting transfer to another project. After this, we have an experiment log where we have a particular D class that we keep exposing them to this painting over a number of sessions to see what that does. And I think that's a reasonable way to approach an experiment as well. So the next 5 experiment results here all come from the same D class, D09372, female, 24 years of age, and she initially describes that keys were a big part of her childhood growing up. Her mother was a teacher, so she had a bunch of key rings all attached, a blob of keys the size of your fist, and whenever her or her siblings were doing something that the mother didn't like, she'd take something from them and lock it in the mother's room. And our D class would try to sneak the keys out, but you couldn't because there was so much jingling. It didn't work, so she'd get caught and she would get locked in her room, and said, "I only tried to jump out my window once." There are some notes that are sort of appended to the end of this, and it doesn't look like there's much of a relation between the notes and the log above it. So the placement is strange. I don't think the inclusion of the notes buys a ton. I think it's maybe trying to give you some amount of empathy. There's only one of any real relevance, and I will talk about that one when we get to it. The next one talks about how that her mom's solution to everything was just to lock it up and walk away. So there was a hallway in the house, there were doors leading to the mom's bedroom, and upstairs where our D class's bedroom, and a black box, presumably siblings' bedroom, and the computer room and the bathroom. So when this D class was left at home, the mom would lock everything but the bathroom to make sure that she did the chores. And she indicates, "I don't think there was a single window on the first floor of that house I didn't climb through at one point or another getting past those locks." We do find out in this note that the sibling is or rather was a brother that died of a heroin overdose, so we cannot corroborate the account. One of the big pieces of rising action here is this third log, and this is probably some of the best imagery of the piece. The story that this D class tells says that mom put her hands on us a lot. My brother got it worse than I did. I remember she had this old hairbrush that she used so much, most of the plastic nubs came off the bristles, leaving these little metal spikes sticking all over. So one time she hits the brother so hard with it, he just had rows of holes in his arm with droplets of blood coming out. It looked like a Junji Ito thing. That she went back later and stole it from her mom's bathroom. And the note on this one says that Foundation officials were able to locate the D class's mother using an address provided by the D class, and a hairbrush matching this description was located in the crawl space adjacent to one bedroom. However, the D class's mother denied any form of abuse towards her children, and permission to use advanced interrogation techniques is pending ethics committee decision. So there's some interesting stuff there. The story checks out, at least to a certain amount. You've got a non-cooperative party here, but you've also got some objective evidence, particularly says that it matches the description. That's interesting. I feel like the Foundation would DNA test this. There would be some sort of testing of some significance to try to test the veracity of the claims, and I think it kind of does the piece a disservice not to make mention, or at least say that they're pending or they're inconclusive. You don't have to give the piece away, but people are going to ask, well, what the hell? We found this hairbrush. Why didn't we take it and test it? That's something to consider with this note when you say, yes, we've got directly corroborating evidence. Well, did you test it? What'd you find out? Let me get back to you. The fourth log in here, her dad compares the mom to Jekyll and Hyde, and found that to be a very apt description. Like, she was nice to other adults and sometimes nice to the kids, recalling a fond memory every summer, going down to the aquarium and getting hot dogs on the boardwalk, but she'd just change on a dime, and it was so hard to talk to her about anything without her turning it around and finding some way to punish them. And the last log in here is going over the day that she left. The mom thought something was missing from her purse and came looking for our D class. grabbed the D-Class by the hair, demanding to know where it was. She ran away to her bedroom, locked the door, and the mom, follows, starts kicking the door, and then she stops, and then there's a really loud banging. The brother is yelling, telling her to put down the hammer, and she doesn't really know what happened after that because she was already halfway out the window, and I still don't know what she was missing. That's a really good log. And after this account, the D-Class became distraught, refused to look at the painting or provide any other accounts. She was amnesticized and returned to Site 28 dormitory. Now, we have a single addendum that indicates that analysis of DNA lifted from the skip, as well as handwriting analysis of the recovered document, which we haven't yet talked about, so that's a nice little lead there, gives us a possible identity, a black boxed name, which we have designated as POI 4128. Investigation of the last known address led to discovery of the POI's mom, likely the subject of the painting, and after determining that the mom had no knowledge of her child's work beyond being an artist, we agreed to perform one last test, and we have a third experiment that requires level 3 credentials to click the collapsible. And this is a video log, and we have an explanation here, which, okay. So what it says is that our mom was placed into the testing chamber for the painting as far as standard procedure, and was asked to record a verbal account. After viewing the painting for 5 minutes, the provided audio recording terminal powered down following an unrelated power surge, causing primary recording to be lost. However, secondary video recording via CCTV captured audio from the subject through the session. This doesn't buy this piece a damn thing. There is no reason to even introduce those last two sentences. We don't, the power surge, the power loss, whatever, doesn't have a part to play in this. I would nix that, both of those passages. In any event, we have a log, and all we have, the entirety of the dialogue is from the mother, and she asks, all right, you just want me to look at a painting and talk about it? She looks at it, furrows her brow, and says, this is one of my daughter's paintings. She's very talented. There's a pause, and she says, she doesn't like when I call her she, but to me, she'll always be my daughter. This is interesting. This gives us the premise for what might be a catalyst for the anomaly. She said she was always so good at art when she was young, always making such pretty drawings, such a good girl. I haven't seen her since she left for school. I love her so much. Why can't she ever call her mother? Her mother who fed her, clothed her, gave her a place to live. We went to the zoo every summer when she was young. I wish she would talk to me. What kind of daughter doesn't love her mother? Wait a second. Is this supposed to be me? She stands up from the chair, clenching her fists, and black boxed the name out, said she didn't. So many people had it so much worse than she did. Who bought her clothes to wear, food to eat? Who put a roof over her head? She never appreciated how good she had it. She couldn't ever do what she was told, no matter what I did. You know what? I'm done here. End log. So we amnesticize and release the mother, and at this point we suspend testing. I don't think that's really necessary for the piece. There's nothing about this log that necessitates suspending testing, just because we have an explanation, of a source or a likely major component to it, doesn't really give us a good reason to stop testing the thing. Lastly, we have our recovered document, 4152-A. It was taped to the wall beneath where the painting was displayed, presumably in lieu of a plaque. And it says, you can't understand unless you've been in my shoes, but that passage is struck through. And what it says instead is, this one's for everyone. Basement love, acrylic on canvas. Am I cool yet, Mom? End article. So one thing I really like with this piece is the steady rising action. This works really well. I think it's probably the strongest quality of the work. The entire thing, the stakes raise and raise, and it all flows very naturally, and it's all explained well. We have our denouement at the end, sort of explaining a likely thing to kick all of this off, and I've seen just a couple of these lately that are based on something to do with a parent or a loved one sort of deliberately misgendering somebody that is going through that whole process of, in this case, female to male. That is something that I know people in that position, and that can be a really difficult thing for them. So I don't want to project onto the author. It can be something as simple as knowing somebody that's been in that position. I don't know the author to speculate on anything along those lines. I think as a piece of conflict to build the rest of the work around, I think it's good. And I think that another thing that works in this piece's favor is that it is not clear exactly what we're doing as far as the anomaly. What exactly is the anomaly? Is it implanting memories? Is it bringing back repressed memories? We have some evidence that would suggest the latter, but I would say it's not conclusive. There are minor things with this work that I think could do with adjustment or straight up removal. This is about an average size piece. I think it could have a couple of lines removed with no damage to the piece, and when you have an opportunity to do that, it makes the piece as a whole stronger, so I always advise doing that. But that said, this is a good work. Are We Cool Yet is the right GOI to use for this, and I don't know of any others that really let you bring in, snappy taglines at the very end of the piece, like Are We Cool Yet does. So all around, good piece. A couple of minor adjustments away from being a really solid piece, and this is a very easy +1 from me. Moving on, the first of two small boys of the week. This is SCP-4465, titled No Man is an Island by Dark Stuff. This piece is 130 words, so I will just read the entire thing. We have no image, we have no fancy formatting, we have an object class of safe, procedures that indicate the skip is to be kept in a secure containment locker. The description reads, SCP-4465 is a Glock 17 pistol. The exact properties of SCP-4465 are unknown. Testing has been scheduled for the following month. SCP-4465 was found in an apartment along with the body of Arnold Dubar, who committed suicide through exsanguination from the wrists. 3 days before the discovery of his body, his college roommate, his mother, and his family dog had all suffered identical gunshot wounds from the roof of the mouth to the back of the head within 10 minutes of each other. Bullets matched those in SCP-4465's magazine. Arnold Dubar was 3,000 kilometers away from the nearest victim. SCP-4465 test logs, collapsible. Testing has been canceled due to ethical concerns. End article. So for a small piece, there's a lot to unpack. This is a really good example of saying more with less. You can put together the entire story of this Arnold Dubar attempting to kill themselves, and this anomalous pistol is instead killing the people closest to them. He doesn't understand why he's not dying. He tries multiple times and eventually slits his wrists instead. We don't want to test with this pistol because we don't know who the hell it's going to kill. This is a really solid work, and it fully deserves its +121 in a week rating. That is outstanding. Not a lot to say when you've got a short work like this. Even as, and that's the thing. When you think about old skips, you think about Series 1 skips, there were short works. This is a short work. This has to work a lot harder for its tally of votes than Series 1 skips did, because the bar has been raised and raised and raised and raised some more, and now you've got to really get after your readers in a very short amount of time. Go, right for it. Lay it out in a way that a lot of people can understand. And this does a really, really excellent job. This was a very easy +1. And on a related note, the other small boy of the week, SCP-4826, No One But Me Gets to Say When I Die by Rock Teeth Moth Eyes. This one also has no image and no fancy formatting, an object class of Euclid, and 2 sentences of procedures. The skip's been placed on suicide watch upon its recovery by the Foundation, and to better accommodate this, it is kept in Humanoid Cell 2208. The skip is described as 31-year-old Ethan Elra, a male substitute teacher from La Crosse, Wisconsin. He is unable to die, although this has only been supported by evidence found during recovery and is yet to be confirmed by direct observation. Confirmation testing has been scheduled for June 17th, 2019. This is in blue text. I don't know if this is a script or if it's just coincidence. We can do a little digging here in the page source and see what's going on. And sure enough, it is just a coincidence that testing is scheduled for exactly 1 month out of the time of this recording. The skip was recovered by implanted Foundation agents and local law enforcement after 3 calls from apartment residents claiming to have heard multiple gunshots from the skip's apartment. Upon arrival, we found the skip covered in flesh and viscera. Now, actually, there's a janky sentence in here. Oh, you know what? No, it's my reading is janky. The sentence is fine, but the sentence could probably use a little bit of cleaning up. It reads, upon arrival, it was reported that the room SCP-4826 was found in had flesh and viscera spread around the room. We use the phrase the room twice. That is unnecessary, and we have this whole thing that the room it was found in had... I feel like this sentence could be reworked just for clarity's sake. In any event, the skip was sitting against a wall with a gun nearby and a knife lodged in its chest. And we examine the skip. We find bullet wounds, stab wounds, incisions in various parts of the body in the form of scar tissue. It claimed that the scars are new. It confirmed they had been self-inflicted before discovery. We have a test log. It is only 1 test, and it is to confirm the anomaly present in the skip. We apply a lethal injection of potassium chloride conducted by Dr. Alan Danica with Dr. Madison Tell witnessing. The skip initially struggled, exhibiting distress at the sight of the syringe and verbally expressing a fear of needles. The procedure was conducted normally, and after successful application, the skip was unresponsive for 5 hours. The skip did not willingly comply to confirmation testing, so the currently supported theory is that SCP-4826 was immune to suicide. Neutralized classification is currently pending. End article. This one is a self-contained little piece. There's no mystery remaining. I do potentially challenge the... I don't think I challenged the main list replacement. I'm not a fan of this format. Perhaps, and you know what? I think it was supposed to be that everything happened on the day of. We have a button, a collapsible that says update file, and this adds test 0. You could do a little bit of neat trickery here to where when you click it, the object class changes from Euclid to neutralized. That might be cool. But it does set you up for a certain expectation and then takes it away from you, which is not the best way to go about it, but it's not hurting this piece too bad. It's at plus 112 in a week. Pretty damn good. I don't have a lot to really gripe about with this piece. It's well done. Don't get me wrong. There are minor stylistic things I would do differently, but what the fuck do I know? I haven't written anything in 6 years. So this is still plus 1 worthy, absolutely. We have a nice little self-contained story. It was immune to suicide. The Foundation looks really dumb in this, which is okay every once in a while. They are human, allegedly, and little tests like this confirm it. I think I might amp up the resistance, perhaps make it out to be even more of a thing. Like they were really struggling. They had to be restrained just go for it. And perhaps because the skip actually knew the nature of their condition, or had some reason to believe that they were only immune to suicide, that'd be probably something I would try to add to punch up the piece. But still really well done, and still +1 worthy. Moving on, SCP-4769, titled Physics Teacher by Polar Pacific. This one is a little different from what you might have been used to in the last few weeks. I am picking this one over some more objectively well-written works. There was a piece by 9volt that didn't make the cut. There was a piece by DJ Cactus that also didn't make the cut. So why am I choosing this one? I am choosing it because I think it is going to be interesting to discuss a piece that is positively rated but still has some significant issues. And this may be a fairly long read. It's quite a long piece, and that's actually part of the issue with it. But we'll begin at the top. We have an image. It's a highly distorted image of what looks like a smiling man in a tie. The caption indicates that the skip's anomalous properties have heavily degraded the image. We have an object class of Euclid, which is struck through and Keter put in instead. That's an old trope, but I'm not entirely against it even now. The containment procedures are quite lengthy. They're 3 paragraphs, so I'm going to go over the highlights here. We are keeping the skip in a standard containment cell, but in a permanent state of unconsciousness, with camera's heart rate monitors and brainwave mapping equipment monitored by no less than 3 level 4 Foundation personnel at all times. That sounds fairly high stakes. We are keeping the subject permanently engaged in an advanced simulation achieved through the direct stimulation of the optical nerves and the prefrontal cortex of the brain. The stimulation of optical nerves, all that stuff's fine. An advanced simulation is probably a superfluous adjective there. We don't necessarily need to, it's the Foundation, and we talk about it's a monster Cray supercomputer cluster. We can probably infer that it's advanced, and that does damage the tone a little bit. So this supercomputer that we're using in the simulation is to be kept as part of hardware at a temperature below 190 C, below negative 190 C, using liquid nitrogen. Is there a good reason for that? Here's the thing: when you get into supercooling supercomputers, it doesn't happen. I say this with having only recently been interviewing for a position in an unnamed organization working with their supercomputing cluster. That's not something that happens. The equipment is expensive enough to run as it is, and the power demands are staggering as it is. Even with this whole exascale thing of we're doing everything we possibly that we can to get efficiency out of the chips, there's still so damn much metal and processing power going on that trying to supercool them to minus 190 C would be effectively impossible using any sort of, if we're using Cray equipment, which I would also challenge because I don't think the Foundation would use off-the-shelf hardware from a company like Cray. It doesn't really have the capability to do temperature that low. And this is all, talk about IT stuff at your peril when you're surrounded by this many nerds. In any event, let's move on. I challenge the notion of liquid nitrogen cooling to that extent. We'll leave it there. We need to perform maintenance on the system fortnightly. The skip is to be placed then into a strong induced coma. Again, it struggles with tone here. Strong is not necessary. I would assume any coma is good enough to do the job. And since we don't want to kill the guy, I think we can probably, again, infer what we need to do out of the description. So we increased the temperature to minus 50°C to allow technicians to survey the system for signs of disrepair and clean out debris which may impact the functioning of the device. That's an odd sort of thing to assume would happen twice a week, that you would have debris in your supercomputing cluster, and I'm not sure they are all that certain on what such an array of computers actually looks like. It's not something that you need to raise the temperature to others for. You don't cool the whole room that the thing's in to that temperature. You just cool the chips to that temperature. And by the time you're getting that low, you're doing, really crazy shit with, laser collisions, trying to slow particles and that kind of stuff. We'll move on. The skip has abnormally high levels of brain activity, and sedative effectiveness is reduced to a time span of roughly 3 hours. This is interesting because we're assuming all sedatives across the board only last 3 hours. That is, what's going on with the brain chemistry here to cause that sort of across the board effect? This is one of those where the procedures are setting up a lot of things that don't necessarily need to be answered just yet. Like I said, these procedures are long, and we continue to say that consciousness of the subject is not an immediate threat, but it should be actively avoided to maintain the immersion of the skip within the simulation. The procedures are, for me, not doing what they need to do. The procedures are there to set expectations and to raise the stakes and let you know what you're getting into. This sort of lets you know what you're getting into, but it spends too much time talking about things that are superfluous to the task at hand. If the issue with the supercooling of this cluster, if the reason that it needs to be at minus 190 degrees Celsius is because anything above that and the simulation starts to behave erratically, then say so. It doesn't say at all why we're doing this. And truth be told, Cray clusters can run very hot. A new-fangled one can run thermal junction maximum up around 170 degrees Celsius. They can run incredibly hot and still do everything they need to do. The skip is finally described as a Class 4 reality bender. That's the first time I've seen Class 4 in the wild. That might just be me. With the appearance of an adult East Indian male, estimated to be 50 to 60 years old, with an average body build and receding gray hair. They appear to be biologically human, but does not require any form of sustenance to live. And prior to containment following Incident -1, the subject was actively employed at Black Box University as a physics teacher and identifies as such. Individuals found to have interacted with the skip could not recall how or when the skip became a professor or its name, or if they entered or exited the premises at any point in time. The students that were directly taught by the skip were not anomalous, other than having a relative lack of knowledge in physics-related subjects compared to other classes. We amnestize these interviewees and release them back into the public. We also say, since, well, it's a reality bender, so this sentence may be superfluous, or maybe they're just trying to make sure that you, the reader with access to this skip, is aware. The skip appears to have control over its perceived reality and is able to manipulate the physical properties of space around it in an undefined radius. We've observed that the anomalous properties are only activated through vocalization or written words. The subject is oblivious to its anomalous abilities even after their effects cause drastic alteration to its surroundings. That is an interesting premise. This is something that does get explored, but it takes a while to get there, and I don't think it does it in enough detail to really... That should be the punch of this, like that, they're a Class 4 reality bender. They have amazing abilities, and they're totally this, uh, sort of savant. They don't really know what's going on. They're not even aware that they're altering reality. That would be perhaps a more interesting piece, perhaps more challenging, but I think you would get, more out of this work with something along those lines. The description talks briefly about the skip resting in a dormant state during times outside of its teaching schedule, which is in quotes, which is a time frame between 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. daily. This has a couple of issues. AM and PM should probably be capitalized. We talk about dormant state. We don't ever really describe where they're going, what they're doing. We do describe them as being inattentive and hard to coerce into talking unless the topic is somewhat physics. This says orientated, which I believe oriented would be the actual word choice here, or that might just be British English versus American English. But if we talk physics with them, they're interested, and they display doctorate level knowledge within classical mechanics, thermodynamics, all sorts of physics related stuff, but lacks a basic understanding of virtually anything else. That's also something that I think should have been explored more in this piece. There's a passage here at the end of the description that attempts to stop the skip from talking or writing about physics related topics. This says physics related topics. It's a little too wordy. But doing so has resulted in the skip discussing these subjects far more vigorously than if left to its normal teaching schedule. As such, preventing the skip from speaking about physics is strictly prohibited to prevent unnecessary simulation resets. That sentence should go in the containment procedures, as it is important to the containment. We have an addendum. The addendum includes several collapsibles, an interview, an observation, the simulation observation log, and a simulation experiment log. And the crux of the entire thing was that the Foundation got reports of extreme slipperiness causing wide-scale car crashes on a particular road. We send an MTF. They identify the cause of being our skip, found in the center of the radius, and this says absent-mindedly teaching a group of students. That's in quotes. That's kind of strange. Who are we quoting, and how do you define an absent-mindedly teaching? We find the skip to be compliant, but annoyed for disturbing the learning of others. And what we figure out is that the lecture neglected to account for friction within a scenario involving kinematics of a car, and in doing so, all of a sudden, friction did not exist on this road. So we presented the issue to the skip and highlighted the error. He corrected the equation, restoring the road to its previous state. And at this point, the object class is changed from Euclid to Keter. The reason being that we have a quote from our doctor that says, "This was a lot worse than we could have imagined. This idiot makes a single mistake and we're done." It's interesting. It's not in my headcanon for what we would normally classify as Keter. For me, that means they're actively trying to escape containment. They're actively hostile. Neither of those things happen here. It is more dangerous, but danger does not define the object class. A nuclear bomb would kill lots of people, but if you can throw it in a box and be done with it, it's safe. Ditto, this thing could wipe out reality as we know it, but it's not actively trying to. It's not Keter, it's Euclid. We have a sentence here that all civilians involved in the incident, the loss of friction on the road, were administered Class A amnestics, and a cover story involving a sudden sleet buildup in a freak snowstorm was dispersed. Anymore, I cannot believe this cover story, nor that you could properly amnestize everybody involved, because people have phones, people take videos. All of a sudden, this thing exists all around the world, and what the hell do you do? It's the problem with with issues like really inexplicable things happening publicly. We have a collapsible interview log between our skip and our doctor. It's not great in all honesty. Our doctor comes off as a total asshole. and we immediately sedate our rambling reality bender. We have a simulation observation log, so we've skipped a lot of time in between here. We've cut straight to sticking this guy in a simulation. There should be, I think, quite a bit of discussion on this being the course of action, but it's not elaborated on at all. What made us think or choose to stick them in a simulation? Is this something we do all the time? Is it something we went out of our way to build for this guy? Because a Cray supercomputing cluster is not something you just throw together in 24 hours. We have an observation log that basically lists different mistakes that our skip has made and the resulting action, the effect within the simulation and the effect on the supercomputer. So it begins very small scale. There was a misspelling, and spelling within dictionaries were altered to match the skip's assertion. We have a different one that indicates that the subject asserted that objects of exactly equal mass cancel each other's gravity out, and this affects the observable universe within the simulation. And it says the simulation freezes and several components of the supercomputer heat up drastically and risk destruction before the simulation is reset. And the action that we take, we administer a sedative, we reset the simulation, and there's a passage here. Cray supercomputer components upgraded to be mostly composed with a tantalum carbide and tungsten composite material, additional temperature regulation cores installed within critical areas of the supercomputer. This is bad IT in action. It does not work this way. I am not certain the author really knows what a supercomputer is or looks like. It is not one big fucking computer. A supercomputer is rows upon rows of servers. Sometimes they're off-the-shelf servers running commodity software like Beowulf. Cray sells their own racks of servers, and in this passage gives away that our author does not necessarily really know what they are talking about. That is hard to get around. This needs reading. Like if you want to use, and you want to specifically use Cray as your supercomputer provider of choice, you need to read about what a Cray supercomputer is, does, looks like, etc., etc. There's no such thing as a temperature regulation core. It does not exist. It does not get integrated into a computer in any way. I don't know what tantalum carbide or tungsten buy you in terms of cooling, because it doesn't specify as much. Our next log indicates that the mistake strains the simulation hardware caused by a fundamental rewrite to the physics engine, so 2 black boxes worth of additional cores were added to the central processing unit to increase computational power. A Cray supercomputer, if you're doing military grade, will have hundreds of thousands of cores, so adding less than 100 is a fart in a hurricane. Again, and adding them to the central processing unit. Cores compose a central processing unit. It's not added to in any sort of way that somebody with an IT background would use that verbiage. So this is on really shaky ground from a computing perspective. And again, if you don't know, ask, get feedback, go reach out to people. If you know that you're kind of shaky on how this stuff works, ask around, see if somebody knows. There are a couple of people around that have worked not only with computers and hardware and cooling, but supercomputers for that matter. We have one last log in here that our reality bender incorrectly asserts the speed of light, and our simulation experiences catastrophic failure. We go from this to a new experiment log, and the trouble is this piece keeps going, and we have no real climax to it. The log consists of us giving different hypotheticals, and the skip explains their best interpretation of what would happen, and then they manifest within the simulation. And we just sort of, we go from there to a recall protocol talking about what to do in the event of a containment breach, that there's no actual threat. And we have notes at the very end. This is within a block quote that says the skip is beginning to show signs of remembering pieces of information from past simulation resets, expressing increasing levels of bewilderment and deja vu. He's learning simulation resets are to be kept to a minimum from now on. And we end the article there. So that's not enough rising action to justify the extremely long set of addenda that we just got through, and it's not built on in any way throughout those to really make it pop. This piece meanders too much. It is probably 3 times longer than it has any need to be to get where we to get to being a good piece. It needs significant revision. It needs an axe taken to it, and I've had to do that to my own stuff. What happens is you can come up with a character, you can come up with a good idea on, it's a physics professor, maybe it's somebody out of your background. You had a physics professor in college that was a real bumbling sort of weird guy, and it's like, well, Jesus Christ, what if he was a reality bender and all of the stuff that he just half-assed and guessed and stuff actually happened? That's fine, definitely run with that, but just having the character isn't enough. There's not enough in here to give us any reason to identify with the character. We only have one piece of dialogue with the skip. They're all 1 or 2 sentences apiece. There's never any humanizing of them in any way, so that's a missed opportunity. Make us give a shit about them as a person, and then maybe you can run with that. You can play with those emotions. As it is, we spend too much time talking about things that don't advance the plot because there's not a ton of plot to it. We just have sort of a neat guy that does a thing and a list of logs where we've tested it out. Anymore, that's really difficult to make work and really net a ton of votes. This piece doesn't have a ton of votes either way. It looks like it's only got about 25 of them, and they're split about 15 up and 10 down. It needs work if it's ever going to get beyond its current +5 rating. It is positive, but only just, and I think there's a lot to consider. We have this whole idea of a simulation, and that's not in itself a terrible idea, but it's executed in such a way that it doesn't really it doesn't do much for us. Like, yes, it is threatening the simulation, but he's a reality bender. He's not a simulation bender. Why is the phenomenon being confined to reality, to the simulation rather? We don't explore that. There's a lot of things that we focus on, things that were less important instead of the more important things that would give us a compelling story. So this is a no vote for me. I like the nugget of the reality bender that's a bumbling idiot, and but it needs, I think, a lot of work to really shine, and I hope the author can sort of take this back to the drawing board, work with some more established writers, and remove the stuff that is not serving the piece and make this thing really shine. Before we move on to the next piece in the recap, I have a request from one of my patrons. Christopher B. Wanted to make mention of Ethics Committee Orientation. This is a work that's about 8 years old now, from Vogt, who is a brilliant writer, and this is far and away his most important contribution to the wiki. I don't know whether he'll agree with me on that, but this was the piece that gave the Ethics Committee teeth. prior to this piece, they were an afterthought. They were sort of a jokey thing, like, haha, the foundation having an ethics committee. And he spun it and said, no, they're the most important people in the room, because all the stuff that's redacted, expunged, they know all of it. And it's the delineation between the things that are, safe versus what is acceptable. It's an absolutely outstanding read. It is plus 1,134 at the time of this recording. Ethics Committee orientation should be one of the first tales that you read in understanding the modern workings of the Foundation. Moving on, SCP-4534, titled Thousands of Photographs of My Favorite Women, written by Crashington. Crashington, SCP Cafe community member, first time article. This has an object class of Euclid. There's an image of an apartment kitchen, little kitchenette looking thing. There's a dishwasher, fridge, and notably over the sink there's a bunch of Polaroids taped to the wall. There's also what looks to be another shitload of Polaroids strewn about the floor of the kitchen, and what might be a stack of them on the counter on the right hand side. The caption reads, "The apartment of POI 4534 upon discovery." We have one paragraph worth of procedures: that all instances of 4534 are to be kept in a standard safe class object containment unit. A new compatible photograph is to be added to the skip every 24 hours for surveillance on the -A. Interesting. Upon transformation into an instance of 4534, they're to be numbered and sorted appropriately. New instances of -A are to be immediately identified and monitored by undercover agents, and to prevent further abductions and the spread of 4534 instances, an investigation into the whereabouts of POI 4534 is ongoing. So it is there. It talks about a few things in these procedures. It's not immediately clear what's going on or what exactly the skip is in relation to the -A. What you might you don't really get any clarity until you get into the description, which indicates that 4534, the designation, refers to a collection of photographs designated sequentially beginning from -1. We have a footnote there saying the current number is updated daily and is now at 6,121. It always depicts one of 5 young women. These are -A-1 to -A-5, shot from various angles and in numerous settings. The anomalous effects of 4534 manifest, and this is where it gets a little confusing with, we talk about what is the anomaly here, because we just called the skip a collection of photos, but the next sentence discusses the anomalous effects of the photos manifest when an instance is brought into close range of any non-anomalous photos between the sizes of A7 and A2. Those are, I believe, British or perhaps general European paper sizes, so that's interesting. The content of the photos will instantly be altered into a unique image of the current -A instance, the current young woman, taken at the exact time of alteration. And at this point, the altered photograph is a new 4534 instance. So it's almost a viral thing that we have these anomalous photos that when put near a piece of paper, it becomes a new photo of a young woman. Got it. So we have a discovery log here, and this is on the heels of the disappearance of a girl, as well as reports of loud screaming and a struggle. Police arrive on the scene of a hastily abandoned apartment, and within the apartment, over 6,000 photos, 6,000 instances of 4534 were discovered, spread across most rooms. And this references the image that we have. And it says that notably the bedroom contained almost exclusively photographs depicting -A instances bathing, sleeping, or changing. That's gross. The master bathroom was outfitted with a reinforced door lockable from the outside. That is scary stuff. It also included a torn mattress and a pet food bowl. That's messed up. The shower head contained traces of blood belonging to a man as well as a dent. The toilet seat, a portion of the ground next to the door, were both smeared with the blood of a woman. We found a tooth belonging to the same woman under the toilet. And in addition to this, a knife with the same woman's DNA was retrieved from another room. The officers took several of the stash pictures to their station as evidence and discovered the anomalous effects when images of the scene taken by them were converted. A Foundation asset reported the anomaly. So this paints a pretty grim picture for what's going on. We also find a Polaroid camera, but determine that it is non-anomalous. We interrogate officers. The owner of the apartment is our new POI and prime suspect. We go from this to an addendum of photograph contents. This is a combination of a log and a log of the photos and a time span for how long these photos persisted. One thing worth noting, there is no mention that I have noticed of a date being present, a date or timestamp on the photo, so it is maybe not clear how we would know the time span, given that we crash the apartment, find over 6,000 instances. We have a footnote that indicates that there are currently 6,121, so that's almost all of them accounted for right off the bat. The math may not check out here, but we don't necessarily know. I don't have a reason to believe we would know the time span of these photos of these women. So the first one, there are 843 photos taken over the span of 2 to 3 months. The 54th is the first image with sexually explicit content, and in number 843, this woman is seen kissing a man in a nightclub, and the testing of the photos found traces of semen on the sexually explicit photo and almost all instances of its kind. This woman was reported missing in May 2015. The second one is about 90 photos over the span of 2 weeks. The third is almost 2,000 images over the course of 16 months. The woman displays behavior typical for depression in several instances. There are several taken within a short time span depicting the woman on her way home. And the very last photo shows the woman walking into an alleyway. So this is an interesting way to tell the story. We can kind of piece together that this man understands what the anomaly is, how it works, and is using that to his advantage to stalk and abduct women. It's really quite disturbing, and really this is one of those, we don't know how the anomaly works, but the person that possessed it certainly did, and used it for, very disturbing, unsavory purposes. The fourth woman is a police officer of the local police department. These pictures are mostly of this woman at work. We find that some of the photos show her actively looking up the address of our POI, and this woman has also gone missing. We have the fifth woman. This was 1,500 or so photos over the course of a little over a year. That includes a picture with a male partner confirmed to be an attendant of the same school as this woman. Images containing the two people. This just says images containing them. I can infer that them in this case means the woman and the male partner. That could probably be actually literally expanded upon. But they're in poor condition, crumpled, torn, or stabbed with a knife. And finally, we have a second addendum that in September 2017, the generated instance did not depict our -5. It instead depicts a new subject, -6. This -6 is our doctor that was formerly the head researcher for this skip. That is a twist I did not see coming. The person that possesses this anomaly apparently has a little bit more than just this whole sexual deviancy thing up their sleeve. They seem to be able to understand that they are being investigated. The researcher's been dismissed from their position, and all responsibilities are now with somebody else, presumably. They're housed in an expanded human containment unit and under constant surveillance. Since we don't know how these -8, it says it's currently not known how -8 instances seemingly disappear. I think we can make some definite guesses based on what we found at the apartment. But we have it basically stepped up our investigation of the POI to a level 3 priority in an effort to prevent a major data breach through the abduction of -A-6, and we end the article here. So this is a good twist at the end, and the work overall is solid. We have the action rises and falls in a bit of a shaky manner. It is the table, the way that this table is presented, I think, is a good way to do it. There's pictures of these women to add some relatability, some character to them. The notes are, can be fairly disturbing. The addendum at the end, I feel like it's missing something. It's missing that last little punch. We've got, we've taken our researcher, and we've got them sort of stashed away where they're where they should be safe, but we don't really know because we don't know the capabilities of the POI. Do we want to follow up on that as as authors into do we maybe we don't want to play that out because we can sort of leave this as the cliffhanger, if you will. The trouble with that is that we have these incident reports, and this incident report is set a solid 18 months in the past. So I feel like if something was going to happen, it would have happened. And if it's not going to happen, we need to sort of play on that instead. That, our researcher has been essentially locked up for the better part of 2 years to keep them safe. That is probably not something they're super happy with. I don't know. The work overall is good, but I feel like it could be great, and with a little more thought given, and perhaps that's something that could be expanded upon later, because the thing is already, it's almost at +50, it's at +48 at the time of this recording. That's, really good, particularly for a first-time piece. This does a lot of things right, but I was left wanting more, and that's to the piece's credit. So, whether you want to see more of it or not, see how it plays out, I think that's a stylistic choice that the author has. I'm not super opposed to it. But leaving me wanting more is, I think, a good thing. I think that's what you want out of your pieces. It's like, no, it can't, it can't end there. I want, I want to know what happens. I have that, I want to know the unknown. That is sort of a core piece of what we do. So in that regard, it's fine. Personally, I want to, I'd like to see how it plays out. But as a piece, I think it's fine. I would maybe expand on what's happened in the intervening 18 months. So that nitpick aside, this is still really good and worthy of a +1. Moving on, SCP-4322, titled Sleepless Dreams by AIS Mallard, we have an object class of Thaumiel, which always catches my eye, and a radio is our image here. It's a wide image using the black highlighter theme, and the caption simply reads SCP-4322. The procedures indicate that the skip is to remain continuously active with daily 4-hour breaks in transmission. Interviews with affected D-Class are to be carried out quarterly to maintain quality of service, and personnel are encouraged to submit media for potential inclusion in broadcasts. We describe the skip as a radio transceiver anomalously modified to transmit psionic waves instead of electromagnetic radiation. I like this, that it says it receives input via a standard Phi-5 cable, which we describe as a cable that's a coaxial cable designed for the transfer of anomalous memetic information. That this is our standard Phi-5 cable. And until this transceiver was modified by the Foundation, it generated output using its metal casing as an antenna. That's something you see in a lot of cars nowadays that can sort of ground to the frame and use it as a big ass antenna rather than having your old school little stick, if you wondered where those went. The psychic energy produced by this radio matches type delta anomalous radiation, characterized by extremely low interference with matter and high propagation over great distances. So we basically created a new antenna as part of a Project Somnium composed of beryllium, copper, lead alloy, and this increased the effective range to the entire planet. Despite the high transmissibility of it, the signal is weak and difficult to detect. The only known receivers are Class 2 psychoreceptors or sentient minds lacking normal sensory input. That becomes relevant down at the end of the work. Since this is a psychic transmission, individuals are capable of completely perceiving the broadcast regardless of any sensory impairments or even linguistic fluency. So we are trying to determine how the other senses can be implemented in this radio. We have a selection of media that we've included in our broadcasts. There's like an hour-long recording of Rain. There's Beethoven's Sixth in F major, a painting of wolves hunting, a documentary about the history of calculus, My Neighbor Totoro, pictures of nature in New Zealand. There's a good number of these, and we discuss Project Somnium in the addendum. This is a rather short work. We describe the project here, stepping back a little bit, going into the history of the skip. We initially just sort of held on to the thing, but somebody requisitioned it to study weak signaling, and the hypothesis was that we could get sort of wide field communication where we couldn't use our standard radio equipment. That project didn't work, but we found that an experimental alloy was effective at propagating the wave from this radio. So we proposed Project Somnium. This was denied by an O5 council member as an unacceptable risk to normalcy, and the ethics committee subsequently voted to overturn the decision and approved allocation of resources for the project. So earlier when I was talking about the ethics committee orientation, yeah, this is the sort of thing that honestly wouldn't have happened without that piece, I don't think. Moving on, that we found that it is able to transmit sound, visuals, and abstract concepts. We determined this by temporarily disabling their external sensory input. And this is a lovely footnote here. After this individual's body expired, their brain was moved to a standard mind interface capsule per Foundation interment protocol. A standard mind interface capsule. We have standard brains in jars. So over the course of the next 4 months, we modified this radio and the transmitter and achieved global coverage. We did a 6-month trial run. We found everything worked out well. 054 approves full deployment, and we reclassify the skip as Thaumiel. Last sentence, since its activation, it has been estimated the object has lessened the suffering of over 12 million disembodied brains. This is a hyperlink to the End of Death hub. End article. God, I'm such a sucker for End of Death stuff. I don't know what it is. It's my favorite concept on the entire fucking wiki. That every time somebody brings something new to the table with End of Death, I am here for it. I am all about it. This works really nicely with another End of Death skip that I covered recently, 4979. That piece talked about basically still in End of Death, these brains in jars that had been sort of given a raw deal by a company that couldn't deliver on their promises and made live perpetual hell. And since you can't die, we've basically doomed these brains, these minds, to an eternity in hell. And the ethics committee steps in there and says we have to leave them alone. and it was really disturbing. It's probably my favorite of the year. This goes really well with it in taking a little bit of the edge off. To me now, canonically, these exist in the same universe, and we've got this project to maybe alleviate some of the hell they're going through. That's a nice thought to me. I don't have really anything else to criticize about the piece. It's really solid. I think everything that was brought up has been used effectively. Not very long, hits you right at the end, like, oh, that's what we're doing. End of death. Great work. Really enjoyed it. Very easy. +1. Now, before I get into the last recap skip of the week, I have 2 long boys of the week to touch on briefly. The first is SCP-4797, titled Spire by Tufto. This is the first Tufto piece that I have covered on the pod. This is a story that deals primarily in what looks to be an alternate universe around the area of San Francisco, California, and dealing with a highly stratified society that was enforced through anomalous means. This begins to sort of become imparted on an MTF that was embedded for long-term exploration of this alternate universe, if you will. Really, really beautiful dialogue. The conflict between the MTF as they've been sort of abandoned, not through, not intentionally, but we can't get them back, and they are on their own in a scary sort of place. Really powerful stuff. Really, really enjoyed this. It's worth your time for sure. SCP-4797. The second long boy of the week, SCP-4246, titled Thalassomania, or The Dreams of the Firstborn by Metaphysician. This is quite a long piece that has to do with findings of anomalous individuals as it pertains to thoughts and urges of the sea and colossal cities beneath it. This gets well into a number of different groups and touches on all sorts of history, and the dialogue's all thoroughly good. It is quite lengthy. We get into whole civilizations and access from different levels of Foundation personnel. I understand that this skip was initially conceived as part of the 4000 contest, so the history is very relevant to the work. It is quite ambitious, quite lengthy, and very well written. It's long, but every piece of it does a little something to build the story. I encourage you to make some time, give this a good read, and I think you will very much enjoy it. SCP-4246, Thalassomania, or Dreams of the Firstborn by Metaphysician. Now, last but not least, SCP-990-J. This is titled Dream Dude by Billith. We have an item number that has a link to the main list, SCP-990, which is a really good read. Series 1 piece that has actually just recently, in the last week or so, joined the +1000 club. Great little piece, not terribly long, definitely worth your time, if for no other reason, because the J riffs on this pretty directly. It is played straight through into the J. A lot of the terminology, little passages here and there are used in the same ways, but where 990 was sort of a harbinger of the future and, various scary things still to come, 990J goes an entirely different way. We find that the skip is identified as a human male dressed in Tommy Bahama brand clothing, and so we call him Tommy Bahama. And before we get there, the procedures talk very heavily about how goddamn broke the SCP Foundation is. that becomes relevant to the work rather directly. We have a thing that says that all suggestions are welcome for containing 990J. However, we do not expect any sort of raise or recognition for your efforts. And then it says, yeah, this may not be the best place to put this, but while we're on the subject of money, we're going to have to limit everyone in Site 19 to 2 cups of coffee per day. And then 294 refuses to comply with personnel requests for liquids of any kind ever since the incident. And you seriously do not know how much we spend per quarter on Folgers alone. It's appalling. So there's footnotes scattered throughout. This is played very much like an old school J. The footnotes are sort of riffing on the piece and adding a lot of humor of their own. There's footnotes back to back and all sorts of goofy things that you can't get away with in a main list, but you can most certainly do in a J, and people will accept it with a smile on their face. We find out that 990J has been appearing to Foundation personnel since 1993, and we've got 2 footnotes. It says, this is the same year the Tommy Bahama Group, Inc. was founded. Research into 990J as an onerological thought form is not underway, and neither are investigations into Tommy Bahama himself as a group of interest. Himself? Is Tommy Bahama an actual person? Like, are we so damn poor that we're just explaining all the things we're not doing? So the footnote right after the footnote says, I just Googled it and he's not an actual person. What a waste of time and resources. Like this document, am I right? But that last bit struck through. So we knew about him since 93. We didn't determine that he was anomalous until 04 when the HR department responded to the original tickets submitted a decade prior. I love that line. So the entity did not receive official classification until the events of Incident-1. That this riffs on the original 990, that the researcher falls asleep and wakes and, in their dream holds an interview with this mysterious man. In this case, this guy failed to clock out for his lunch and fell asleep during his lunch break and had the interview with our Tommy Bahama, which we give the name to. And this interview runs straight along with how 990 runs of, I don't have a name, but this is more like, I don't really care what my name is. And finally, we get to the hook. We get to the punch. So our Skip says, actually, while I have you here, can I talk to you about something? It's important. Our research says, sure. And the Skip says, great. So listen, buddy, last year I made $1,800 a week working from the comfort of my own home. Isn't financial independence the best? Yeah, I guess so. Anyway, you seem like a smart guy, and I like that, so I'm going to let you in on a little secret. You can also be making this kind of cash, man. You can have 2 cars and a mansion too, baby. You just got to invest in your future. Invest in Herbalife. So this got me, and it got me really good, because my old boss, a couple of jobs ago, we were doing IT for businesses, and the dude was also selling Herbalife on the side. He did this sort of stuff, and so our researcher kind of laughs at that, and our Skip immediately retrieves a case of supplements and a binder from under the table. And our guy says, "Oh shit, you're serious?" And 90J says, "I am so serious, Ethan." He goes, "It's Edward," and gets cut off. "I'm so very serious about giving you the opportunities you've only dreamed of. Now, I'm a straight shooter, you're a straight shooter. Let's get down to brass tacks. I want you to be my prime VIP downline distributor. Can I sign you up for the welcome package or what?" And opens up the binder and says, "See, for every distributor you sign up, you get a portion of their earnings and their signed up distributors' earnings and so forth. There's literally no limit to the cash you can make." And our researcher says, "This is a pyramid scheme." And our Skip says, "A what now?" We go, "A pyramid scheme. Guy at the top gets the big cheese. Lesser guys make money based on the number of people you recruit under you. I don't even know what your product is. What does it do?" And our Skip says, "Herbalife is a a proprietary blend of antioxidants, enzymes, and essential vitamins specifically designed to rid the body of toxins," and gets cut off by our researcher. "I can see you're reading off the label. You don't know anything about the products you sell, do you?" Our Skip goes, "It's organic. It's full of organics." And at this point, the interview ends. The footnote says there was more to this conversation, but the transcriptionist assigned to copying the interview into digital source was laid off. And essentially, our skip continued to pitch Herbalife for several minutes, despite the researchers' obvious growing discomfort of the situation. Tried to push through by bringing some of the Site 19 residency contracts, legalese of which the skip found highly distressing and very airtight. At which point, the skip produces a smoke bomb and throws it at the ground, causing the room to fill with smoke, with our researcher waking up afterwards. So, guy extricates himself from the situation by ninja vanish. Just throws a fucking smoke bomb. So we have an addendum after this log. Due to a sharp increase in sightings of 990J and dreams of personnel with suboptimal credit scores, we have a footnote that says, wow, a lot of you guys are wildly in debt, and no, we are not processing insurance claims at the moment. Why do you ask? So, Site 19's been retrofitted with several thousand REM-inhibiting waveform generators, so you can no longer dream at Site 19. And this has been quite effective. The encounters have been reduced by 99%. Our second incident log, this is our second addendum, incident log -2. This is in 2016. 051 discovered a handwritten note taped to his forehead, as well as 11 tubs of Herbalife Formula 1 Advanced Nutritional Shake Mix, 3 cases of Formula 2 multivitamins, and 17 packages of Herbalife Simply Probiotic and Active Fiber Complex when he awoke in his quarters. The note reads as follows. Hey there, killer. Just got you set up with our deluxe package. I'll check back in with you in a week to get an update on your sales. Remember, always start with a smile. And it's signed TB. 051's denied having any interactions with 990J. And we have a note from 051. It says, absolutely preposterous. Now, how would you like to be your own boss? End article. I love this. I would not have thought to go this way. Like, if you wanted to make 990 a joke, that, you could do, like, the typical things would be, like, he gets shit wrong, or it's, he's a harbinger of funny stuff or random stuff, but that he comes in and pitches Herbalife and basically runs the foundation out of money is I didn't see it coming. I find it absolutely hysterical. Really well done. It is very true to the original skip, which, you kind of do at your peril these days, but this was how a lot of them were done just, 5 years ago or so. A lot of them were played really straight, really true to the reference material. I think this is a great example of that. At plus 41, I actually think it's a little underrated. This is... I like it. I think you'll like. Give it a read. I covered most of it, but I've left out a couple little things. These footnotes are really good. This was an easy +1. And that's 10. 10 articles as part of the Week 20 recap. Before we get on out of here, I do have a mailbag question from Crashington, who asks, what SCP series do you feel the strongest connection to, be it because you just like the most articles, contributed the most in it, or whatever else reason? So I thought about this. I have 2 answers. Series 2 was where I got started. I was around in early Series 2, so, I'm sentimental for Part of the Tone, as that was sort of when it was turning the corner from really basic scary things and starting to get that sense of, oh, we can actually add some narrative and some, a fucking plot. What a concept. Moose did a lot to further that, I think, with SCP-1000. And from there, the common wisdom has been that the winner of the 1000 contest, in a way, sets the tone for what's going to happen for the next 1000. And it's been going more and more into that, deeper, more nuanced narrative for years. It's been trending that direction, and I think I was fortunate to be around to see that transition into that sort of material. My other answer is where we're at right now, Series 5. For the reason being, this is by far the most I've ever actually read of the wiki. Cafe has kept me really busy in actually reading skips, and the irony of being staff and definitely being promoted staff is that you don't actually get to spend a lot of time reading the wiki anymore, both because of the time constraints of doing staff shit, but also because at a certain point you're so inured to how the sausage is made, it's not the magical thing it was when you first got here and saw all the cool shit going on. It starts to feel like a drag sometimes, and I know a lot of staff struggle with that. But Cafe's been cool in that it has given me all the reason in the world to keep up with things and to see all of the amazing stuff the people that have not yet, had the give a shit beaten out of them are still doing. That's really cool. And so this is the most I've ever read, and the quality has never been better on the wiki than where we're at right now. So that's a wrap on week 20. Week 21 show will be, far as I'm aware, about this time next week on the 24th. Wanted to give a special happy birthday to my buddy Taylor Itkin, who is having his birthday over this weekend. Hope it is a good one. And that is about it. We're out of here. If you thought this show was worth $1 and you'd like to support me, I do have the Patreon up at patreon.com/scpcafe. We also have the store. You can get some cool shit and support the wiki. A cut of every purchase goes to fund Project Foundation, and a number of products on the wiki also support the artists that created the work. So however you do it, I'm grateful to each and every one of you, even if you just listen. The numbers do make me feel good seeing them go up, up, up. So that's it. We're out of here. Till next time, keep reading, keep writing, and I'll see you on the other side.